came out with news yesterday on our first caustic fusion results out of the complex we call Sequoia. We thought they were very, very good results. It was 221 kilos of material that went in on the first hole into the southern portion of Sequoia. Sequoia is a very unique thing, actually. It will be actually the largest kimberlite in Lac de Gras by far. I believe the next producing kimberlite is 400 meters, so it is a very, very large and high tonnage possibility for us, and that's what's so exciting. Part of the confusion yesterday was everyone was asking, well, is this a good result? And the answer is, we're putting a needle into a 1 kilometer long complex that is 2 inches in diameter, which we cut in half. So the material that went into the lab, 221 kilos, is very much like a solid block. It's a half a coffee table. So out of that whole kilometer, we put a half a coffee table worth of kimberlite into the lab and got 191 diamonds out of that, which is good. We would have liked to have gotten more, like 1 or 2 diamonds more in the 0.85 to 1 millimeter range. So it was very close to being a really good result for us, but it's a very good result. And so much so that we're actually developing, our buddy's developing a program right now to drill this summer. So in 5, 6, 7 weeks up in the Sequoia region and keep on drilling that because it warrants a lot more drilling. Those were good results. The market, one of the difficulties we have is we have to re-educate everybody out there because the last real diamond thing in the 90s, those investors are kind of gone. And if they haven't gone, they've forgotten what they learned back then. So we're in a teaching mode again. If you read our news releases, you'll find them somewhat technical. And we're having Buddy do that so we can explain to people the different steps, what is good, what can be expected, as part of that learning process. But yesterday in the market, I think there was a lot of traders involved, and when it didn't get a double on the opening, they kind of sold their positions and scared everybody. We've had many talks with analysts yesterday. Everybody likes results. Everybody's happy. The market will be sucked up by the traders will be gone. Real interest is coming in, and I think we're gonna move on from there. But we plan to go this summer, drill more of Sequoia, and do a airborne EM mag survey over the entire property, which we just expanded by about 110% higher than the actual hectares we had prior to. So we have a very large property. It's right on trend with the 2 mines. So far we're super happy with the progress we're making, and we're looking forward to getting back very, very shortly to the field.
Did you want to answer any of these questions here? We had the one that we wanted to keep for Buddy, but there's the second one. Did you want me to go into that one? So we did receive a couple questions ahead of time, and if you do have any questions for Pat or for Buddy when he gets here, then feel free to just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask those questions. But we'll read this one here. So into the July 6th news release, it said, "What can be said is that it is more encouraging to have clear white stones than to have the majority of the diamonds described as bort. Bort, in my understanding, is industrial grade diamonds. What commercial grade use could describe the white stones diamonds market, and why is this more encouraging?"
Well, you always want clear diamonds. Diamonds over a period of hundreds of years have been marketed really well. When pinks first came in, basically pink is an inclusion that has melted in the diamond to give you the pink color. So when you look at a pink diamond, actually it's imperfect, except for the marketing that goes with it. And that has worked very well. But the number one retail seller of diamonds by far, is clear white diamonds. And I believe Akadi and Diavik both have about 60% clear diamonds. And that first small sample, and keep in mind this is a very tiny sample, ran about 75% clears. So that's really good for us, and we're happy. Bigger samples, bigger diamonds will give us more information on that. But for this sample, it was a very, very good result. So it's very positive. And bort is just dirty diamonds, black diamonds, stuff that will never be in jewelry. It will just be used for sandpaper. So we actually didn't have any borts in that little parcel. So it was a very good result that way.
Okay, great. And then I know there was some questions asked in some chat boards and things like that regarding the financing and what the plans are moving forward after these results. Is there anything you can talk about there?
Yeah, well, currently we have about 1.2 million in the till. We've paid for this last program, and the only thing we have to pay for in the future is the fusion, which is ongoing right now. But that won't be that much money. It'll probably be under $200,000. So Buddy is putting together a program right now that could range from $2 to $3 million. That will include drilling and geophysics. So we had a lot of discussions yesterday with a lot of, for the first time, bigger funding partners. In the last few PPs that we've had a lot of retail. They were 100% retail. We're getting institutional interest now from yesterday's news release. So we're in discussions currently with several groups, and there's more coming. But it'll all depend on what Buddy's, and he'll have that done within a week because this is a pressing matter because we want to get out there when we have a lot of sun. The good and the bad of the territories is, the good part of it is there's 2 mines right beside us. They have all the infrastructure in the world. They have 2 landing strips within 17 and 30 kilometers of us. So in that regard, we have a lot of infrastructure. But the reality of exploration up there, it's all helicopter-borne support. So we need daylight. So that eliminates the darker months of the year. And when we drill, because most of our kimberlites are recessive, it's from on top of a leg. So we need ice, and that dissipates in very early June if we're lucky, depending on the year. So we get about 3 months up there. We can drill on the middle of lakes. Fortunately, Sequoia is it's a kilometer by 200 to 300 meters wide. So we can go from the shore. That's what we did from one of those 2 holes that we put into Sequoia. We drilled from the shore on a negative 50-degree angle back in. So that's one that we can drill right now. So we're going to go after it based on the results, based on the fact that we'll have all land targets on that. And yeah, Buddy has to, in the next week, we'll have an update on the program that he proposes for 6 to 7 weeks from now. And that will include, as I said, drilling on Sequoia and geophysics to cover the entire property. With a little twist on the newer technology, it's quite useful. Buddy can expand on this a little bit more, and I hope that was his door coming in, but we'll see. Anyways, that would describe that.
Sure. Maybe while we're kind of on the topic, we can bring up the land expansion here.
Yeah. After we started hitting kimberlites, we wanted to increase our land package. So the current property that we had over the last 7 years is in blue or turquoise, and the yellow outline is what we just staked in the last month. So it's about, I think we have maybe about 50,000 plus hectares now. But we covered the whole trend. You see the trend coming off of the economic pipes of Diagras. Buddy hit those back in the 90s. It's liniment control, fault control, going right into our ground. There's going to be another pipe from Makati going into production right beside, like a kilometer or 2 away from our boundary on that same trend. So yeah, we're in the right neighborhood. We've got, De Beers hit 23 pipes up there. Buddy hit 1 that they dropped. And we're currently just doing the big geophysical surveys around those kimberlites, and we're finding things they didn't see because they only drilled mag. We're drilling gravity and EM. But when we're going to do this whole airborne, it's going to cover the entire property in a tight spaced 50-meter line spacing. So we're going to see everything. When De Beers flew this property back in the early 90s, they thought, like most other places in the world, the kimberlites were going to be about 500 meters across. So they did 250-meter spacings on their surveys. As they found out, as time went by, the average kimberlite in Lac de Gras is 150 meters. So if you're doing 250-meter spacings, you're going to actually miss entire kimberlites with those spacings. So our survey from the helicopter will be at 50-meter spacings for both EM and MAG, which will be run at the same time. And there's a little bit of a new technology twist that Buddy probably would be best describing, but it's going to be really good data. It's going to be it's going to have some technology involved, and it will happen this summer. So that's exciting. We'll see a lot more targets. There's going to be a lot more pipes in this area. And our philosophy is, if they're non-magnetic, they have a way better chance of producing good diamonds, because the mag process is destructive to diamonds. It's oxygen and heat, and it burns diamonds, either resorbs them partially, or at some point it actually fully resorbs them back to carbon. So we're not drilling mag, we're drilling everything but mag. And it's so far we're hitting about 80%, 90% on our targets.
Okay, we just had a question. Sorry, that's the grand entrance.
The dog is going to eat our geologist. Just keep that in mind right now.
So just oh no. Just while Buddy settles in here, we did have a quick question come in. Is there any update on the birch kimberlite?
Birch is in the lab, and we expect it to be out within the next 3 weeks. We like birch. It's got the whole suite of indicators. It's got some larger indicators in it, and it's coarse grain. So we're pretty excited about seeing that, and that will be in the next 3 weeks.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we'll introduce Buddy. Buddy, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hi there.
It'll come talk to you. Okay, so yeah, you were mentioning some things that Buddy could answer.
First question.
Yeah, so we did have a question here, and this was emailed in from John. So how does the Sequoia kimberlite preliminary yields compare to the production at Akati and Diagras? Both mines are within close vicinity and are in production, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, we're too early stage to answer that question. The whole program, exploration program this spring, was to find the kimberlites, tag them, see if there's diamonds, and then go back to the diamondiferous ones. And it's mines, to get to PEA stage, you have to do a fair bit of drilling to get grade with larger diameter holes and get about 5,000 carats preferably to get the price of the diamond, so you know the average price. That's all ahead of us. So we can't answer those questions till those two things are done.
Okay, and we'll open it up if anybody has any questions. You can unmute yourself. Did you want to talk about this image here at all?
Sure.
Because we can bring this up. Just 1 second here. All right, so they can see that there.
Yeah, that image is all those little black dots are gravity stations. So it was done in winter, howling wind, a little box where you have to get a spring to steady, and by the stretch of the spring you can measure the gravity. So it's about 30 minutes a station, each one of those little black dots. And the blue, the kimberlite's less dense than the surrounding granite country rock. So the blue there, we think, maps out the kimberlite well. On the southern bottom part of that diagram, you see I've got an arrow saying jack pine kimberlite. We think that's where De Beers found the jack pine kimberlite. There's a strong magnetic anomaly there, and you can see how Sequoia, what we're calling Sequoia, extends north of that for about several hundred meters. There could be kimberlite way down the bottom there. There's a light green blob that needs to be tested. It could be kimberlite. And then all the orange brackets I've got going up are sort of large zones, 200 meters, 150 meter zones that have never had a drill hole into them. So we would like to go back and put, now we know Sequoia's diamondiferous. It's also the biggest kimberlite, as far as we know, in the field. It's by far the biggest. So not all of it has to be good. Bits of it can be good and still sustain a mine. So one of the things we want to do is get back and test those areas where the orange brackets are.
Okay, great. And we do have the news release here. I'm not sure if it would be valuable for you to kind of interpret this table here, maybe. I can just pull it up here, just to give an idea of what this kind of describes for anybody that's unfamiliar.
Yeah, a guy called Utzfeld, nice war name. Utzfeld in the late 70s, early 80s was working with De Beers. And when they were looking at their commercial stones and sizing them, he realized that if you plotted the commercial size stones bigger than 1 millimeter, he noticed that they plotted on a curve. And then he came up with the idea, I wonder if that curve goes to stones smaller than a millimeter, and then therefore we could take very small samples and get the smaller diamonds, see if they make a curve, and then predict the larger stones. And so sure enough, when they did extract the really small stones, the curves did, the small stone curve matched the big stone curve. So this is a way of, with a fairly small sample, telling if your kimberlite is diamondiferous for one. And if you plot that curve on log paper, if you plot those numbers on a log paper, they should make a curve if you have enough data. You look at our data there, the total, it's 146 for the 100 micron 0.1 millimeter stones, drops off fairly quickly to 54, a third, drops another third or 5 times to 0.212 millimeters, but then it goes 742. It doesn't drop much off at all. So that's unusual. So all I can say is I can't make a curve from that yet. The 11742 is a nice sequence. It would lie flat. So if you project that out into big stone space, it's suggesting you're going to get big stones. But the sharp drop off and the change it around 0.2 millimeters, I don't understand yet. So we need more sample.
And so question related to that maybe would be a good point. What can be said about the size of the stones? They all seem to be very small. To what degree is that a concern?
The whole point is that we are looking at the smaller stones because it's so expensive to get the big stones. So we need steps of encouragement before you go and take a large diameter, 24-inch holes, large diameter drilling is required to get grade. And that'd be a $5 million program. So you need this encouragement from the smaller stones first before you go and get the larger stones. There will be larger stones, and that will determine the grade. And I think I described earlier how you use these smaller stones with size frequency curves. But to make the size frequency curves, I need about 10 stones in each of those sieve sizes to stabilize the slope of the curve.
Bigger sample.
So, we need a bigger sample.
Okay, great. And again, if you have any questions, that's all we have so far, but feel free to unmute yourself or write it in the chat. I'll give everybody a moment there. All right, well, I don't see anything here. Is there anything you'd like to touch on at all?
Otherwise, for the whole program so far, we're very pleased with the result. And we're looking forward to carrying the next phase of this project off in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So.
All right, quick question here from Craig. How many more kimberlites do we have in the lab?
There are 3 kimberlites on that.
Yeah.
Birch,
Alder,
and cedar. Alder and cedar are at Microlithics, a lab in Thunder Bay, and birch is at SRC. We did send some kimberlite to CF Minerals in Kelowna, but they informed me that they were full, so we moved those samples and sent them to Microlithics. It did delay us. I'm a bit annoyed.
So assuming we will have news on those in the future coming up.
As soon as they come to hand, we'll release them.
Perfect. Quick question here from Coldip. Is not having any stones above 0.85 millimeters a disappointment?
Well, you've got to say having big stones is good, but this is a small sample. The next 8 kilograms could have a big stone in it. It's nuggety and semi-random. So again, we'll be able to, we're taking about 3 to 4 times more sample, about 800 kilograms. We should be able to start answering those questions. But the flattening of that curve suggests that we're going to get some bigger stones.
Okay, great. Craig's just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the importance of the clear stones.
Well, you know, we're dealing with sub-millimeter stones, so none of them are commercial. I've got to make that clear. But obviously, if they were all shitty looking and brown or black, it would be less encouraging than if they're all.
Did you swear?
Did I use a bad word? If they're all clear and octahedrons, it's better. The lab gave us the descriptions of any stone bigger than 0.4 millimeters. We got a dozen descriptions. We may get the rest of the descriptions in the future, and we'll release them. But all the stones they described, bigger than 0.4 millimeters up, were described as white. 75% of them were clear, and the 25% were described as cloudy, which could be near gem, but they're not gems because they're not big enough. But if that distribution translated into the big stones, and it doesn't always, you can get a change of character. It would be very good. You know, Diagras, for example, has 30%. At this stage, had 30% clear stones.
I thought they were like higher than that.
30% clear stones.
Wow.
At this stage.
How big in length were the other kimberlites? I'm assuming the ones that are still in the lab. How big were those?
Sequoia is by far the largest. We actually think Sequoia is a string of kimberlites that have coalesced, erupted, and their craters are overlapping. And that's how it got big. The other ones are within Diagras, Acadi size, somewhere between 150 and 200 meters across.